Good afternoon, everybody. This is Greg Kahn from the Emerging Tech Exchange. We're excited to introduce our new series, Emerging Tech Bytes, today, with our first session on the digital home. And we're going to get started in about 30 seconds. So grab a cup of coffee and we'll jump in a quick minute. Okay, why don't we get started? Again, for those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Greg Kahn. I'm the CEO of the Emerging Tech Exchange, formerly the IoT Consortium. And we are so excited to have you here today. Look forward to seeing many of you in person coming up soon, either in New York or at the Consumer Electronics Show in January in Las Vegas. The organization became Emerging Tech Exchange last week, and we are excited to introduce our first in a new virtual series that we're calling Emerging Tech Bytes. We're sitting in our homes, many of us today, and so the first session is on the digital home. And I'm excited to share, we have an incredible group of panelists with us today from all sides of the ecosystem. Ben Arnold from the NPD Group, Mark Reimer from ADT, Samantha Fine from Samsung SmartThings, Mohammed Abdelghani from Google, and Raman Sidhu from Comcast Xfinity Home. So much has changed since we have last gotten together in person. Of course, we're still in the midst of the global, some of us are calling it the global endemic now, not the pandemic. But we also are on the heels of a very exciting development in Washington, D.C., where the infrastructure bill was passed yesterday, which brings a lot new promise to this industry of the digital home. There'll be more broadband deployment across the country. It will improve infrastructure in general. And we're excited to talk through a little bit of that today and what this group of incredible panelists is seeing happening in the home space and whether they think it will change once we get back to some sort of in-person working and entertaining and educating, et cetera. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ben Arnold, who's the Executive Director of Consumer Technology at the NPD Group, to set up today's session. And then we're going to have a panel with Ben and Mark and Samantha, Mohammed and Raman, talking about this incredible ecosystem that we're all part of. If you do have questions, quick housekeeping note, put it in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as possible before the top of the hour. And without further ado, Ben, if you're ready, I'll let you kick off, introduce yourself, and share your vision of what you're seeing in the space.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. Let me just share my screen very quickly. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here today to talk about the digital home, and I'm so appreciative of Emerging Tech Exchange for the invitation. My name is Ben Arnold. I'm a consumer technology industry analyst, and I'm with a company called the NPD Group. Just a couple of words about NPD. We are a global business intelligence firm, and what we focus on is consumers and their buying habits, what consumers are buying at retail, what are the drivers of those purchases, and what are some of the trends that are happening in the marketplace. We have a global presence, footprint across 20 industries, and really we're the experts in consumers. And my little piece of the operation here is technology. I've been an analyst at NPD for about 10 years and really focused on what we call the digital home and however we define that the entire time. And what I wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about some of our data, what we're seeing, and what we think are some of the drivers that are getting consumers through this moment of time, and what that means for the future. So let me just move slides really quickly. One of the things that we're really focused on are drivers of digital home investment. So as Greg mentioned, we've been through, I think it's 20 months of sort of pandemic, COVID living, lockdowns, getting out of lockdowns, vaccines. What has that meant for consumers and the digital home? Well, there have been some pretty interesting developments over that time. And I'll just kind of go through what we have here. This is actually shooting through all of our data portfolio. First off is innovation. And what we've seen in the consumer technology market is prices have gone up, partially due to supply constraints, partially due to a lack of promotion, but also we're giving consumers compelling products to buy. OLED and TVs, right? It's a nice step up for consumers, who are really interested in streaming. In routers, it's mesh, right? That's been the innovation step up. In cameras, consumers have gone into mirrorless cameras. And so when you look at a lot of the product categories, yes, prices are higher because of these outside forces, but also we're giving consumers compelling products to buy and ways to step up to enhance their experience. The other part of this is broadband. And what we've seen over the last 2 years in our data is that more and more consumers have fast broadband. What do we know about internet access and consumers? When consumers get fast broadband speeds, they become a bigger part of the technology economy. It's hard to use a lot of these devices without great internet speeds. And so that's been a driver of the investment in the digital home. Hybrid work, many of us, I think all of us, or most of us on the call today are calling in from home, and we expect there to be, 30% of workers will be working from home, either full-time or part-time going forward. That has big implications for things like internet access in the home, certainly how much you might use your security camera. And I think what it boils down to is conditions in the home are changing because our routines are changing. On the right side, just a couple more of these drivers. Spending power. We've uncovered new consumer groups that are now spending on technology. And for whatever reason, some upgrade cycles have skipped them. And so now we're seeing, for instance, the 55 plus demographic spending more on technology than they had been because they're stepping into these feature enhancements like big screens and TVs, OLED, mesh routers. Experiences. That's been a little bit of a challenge to the technology industry. As we got to the summertime in 2021, where many people actually started to travel and do more things outside of their homes, we saw a little bit of a dip in technology purchases and spending on things like TVs and audio equipment for the home automation. But overall, what we've seen is that experiences have not come back just yet. So the fact that we're not spending on things like cruises and live sporting events as much as we had been, some of that money is going into technology and investment into the digital home. And then finally on the slide, free time. And this has been a big sort of measure that we've been doing at NPD, trying to understand, okay, as a result of the pandemic, you're not maybe commuting to work as often, maybe you're not going on as many business trips. Do you have more free time? 38% of consumers said that they have more free time as a result of the pandemic that we've been through. And what are people filling their time with? We're streaming video. We're playing video games. We're going outside and using cameras. So there are a lot of these factors which are driving consumers to spend more on technology. Again, my lens is hardware, but when you see where consumers are spending their hardware, you get an idea of where they're spending their time and sort of their engagement. I just have one last slide to sort of kick the conversation off today, and it's looking at sales in each of these product areas during the pandemic year. So that would be the 12 months ending February 2021, and comparing that with what's happened over the last 3 months. We know that technology sales surged during 2020, during that pandemic timeframe. Things have mostly come back to earth, but we're still seeing a lot of product categories grow on top of that huge growth that we saw in 2020. So I just have a couple of examples here, bucketed these products into 4 categories: entertain, create, connect, and work. This is US retail sales. So starting on the entertain side, where we've pretty much seen sales levels maintain, products like sound bars and TVs did really well during the pandemic year. As we're emerging, actually a 2% decline in TV sales, after a 24% increase is actually pretty good. So what that says to me is that consumers are still buying TVs. We're still engaging in those habits, even if they've come down a little bit from the heights of 2020. Of course, we've got new virtual reality hardware out there that's driving some entertainment dollars in tech. Gaming PCs, anything that touches gaming is growing in tech. And we've seen that continue to grow through 2021. The next piece is connectivity. And I'm with you. I'm looking at 51% growth in routers during the pandemic year one. We've actually seen a lot of that tail off. And part of me thinks that consumers were buying routers and mesh routers, to handle their work at home. And maybe, streaming is less of a driver and gaming is less of a driver of router sales than we thought. It's probably a little more tied to work. But still, we've seen growth in routers as a way to build the infrastructure in the home and broaden Wi-Fi access. Home automation is a category that continued to grow through 2020, as growing here in 2021 over the last 3 months, really being driven by smart lighting, cameras, and connected power products, which I think is really interesting. And then the last two categories that I'm looking at, looking at cameras and drones, technology that we use to create things. There's a big creator movement in technology right now. And those categories have mostly held up as well. If you know anything about digital cameras, you know that digital camera sales are in perpetual decline because smartphone cameras are getting so good. So it's actually good to see that the last 3 months of camera sales have been positive for mirrorless cameras and drones. And then finally, something that many of us are well acquainted with, the technology that we use to work from home. And this is an area where we've definitely seen some declines over the last 3 months. And I think part of that is many consumers, returning to work, having less of a need for things like webcams and keyboards and mice, but really heavying up on those products through 2020 when we were all really confined to virtual work and working from home. So as I think about the evolution of the digital home, and yes, we'll be talking about quote unquote smart home and home automation products today. But if you kind of broaden that definition and think about the activities that consumers are engaging in and what's the technology that enables them to do those things, we're really seeing the sort of the ebb and flow of activities in the home and, the disruption and sort of the writing of our routines as we make our way through this experience. I don't want to take up any more time because I know we have a great discussion ahead of us. So I want to send it back to Greg and thank you very much for the opening time today.
Thank you, Ben, and certainly unpacked a ton there and provided a good benchmark for us to be able to dive into this conversation. And without further ado, because we have a great conversation to be had, I'm going to go through the rest of the speakers, ask each of you to introduce yourselves, just give a short little 30 to 60 second on what you do, your company's place in the digital home. And we'll kick off with Mark. So Mark, if you could start first.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. That was great. And I could attest to the data because ADT in the last 19 months has seen an over 200% increase in DIY installed security cameras. So absolutely agree with you. My name is Mark Reimer, VP of Product Engineering for ADT. I'm also ADT's representative on the CSA, the Connectivity Standards Alliance, working with hundreds of member companies on Matter. I'm also on the board of directors for Z-Wave Alliance as well. We have a strong presence there, as well as the Colorado Burglar and Fire Alarm Association on that board. Super excited to share my perspective, bringing together security, consumer, and what ADT is doing with this group.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome. Samantha.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Samantha Fine. I'm VP of Business Development and Marketing for Samsung SmartThings. I'm also on the CSA Board of Directors, helping to bring the Matter standard to life, as well as the Thread Board of Directors, and thrilled to be here to discuss what we at SmartThings had been doing from the very beginning. You could say we're the OGs in the smart home space, which then has evolved to the connected home space and now the digital home space. Really interested in discussing today exciting topics in emerging technologies, really centered around being an open and inclusive ecosystem that brings the future of IoT to all, with a center on customer choice.
Thank you, Samantha, and welcome. Thrilled to have you. Mohammed.
Hello, folks. I'm Mohammed. I'm a senior product manager here at Google on the Nest team. I am responsible for smart home partner integrations with the Google ecosystem so that you can manage your smart home devices with touch, voice, automation, and excited to be speaking to you today. In terms of kind of Google's role in the digital home, it wears many hats. Obviously, Google offers a number of consumer electronic devices to help solve particular user needs in the home. And it also tries to broadly enable the smart home ecosystem with the Google Assistant, as well as with various modalities of smart home control via touch or automation. So excited to be speaking to you today.
Terrific, and welcome. Raman.
Hey, how's everyone going? I'm Raman Sidhu from Xfinity Home from Comcast. So I'm a VP of Product and Strategy for Xfinity Home as well as Xfinity Internet. Those are the two kind of key residential services coming out of Comcast. And so Comcast is really about connecting you to the things that you love, things that matter, whether that's watching your favorite TV programs via our kind of X1 and entertainment platform, or streaming from Disney or Amazon or Hulu within that X1 experience. We also connect you to your home via Xfinity Home and our digital security experiences through Xfinity Internet. So I think, from when we talk today about emerging technologies, how these things are coming together, for us, for Xfinity, for Comcast, it's about bringing together the digital and the physical. How do we bring those experiences as consumers are bridging those, making them into nice, seamless, easy to use, easy to set up experiences for the masses? So that's our role here in the Connected Home. Really excited to the opportunity. Thank you so much, Greg.
Fantastic. Thank you, Raman, and to everybody. Why don't we dive in? And that was a perfect segue, Raman, to the conversation. You talked about the joining of physical and digital. Some are calling it phygital. All sorts of fun mashups that are happening in this space. And I mentioned that we've evolved our organization from the IoT Consortium to Emerging Tech Exchange to reflect the broader notion of kind of where the industry is going, is that there are all of these emerging technologies that are coming to the forefront, and businesses and consumers alike have to sort of figure out business propositions around them in ways that we as organizations can help to make it more simple for individuals and for businesses alike to think about how they operate in the space, which is a challenge when we're all in the middle of a global pandemic and about to get out. And Samantha, you had mentioned that we have evolved from the smart home to the connected home to what we're calling the digital home. And so I'm going to turn to you first. And the question I'm going to pose, and I'd love everybody to give a real quick answer on this, is COVID was in many ways the equalizer, right? There were any organization that hadn't thought about digital transformation had to turn their business on its head and think immediately about how things are done differently. Consumers were working from home, they were educating, they were trying to stay well from home. And in many ways, this was sort of the coming out party of this digital home ecosystem, right? In other ways, there were huge challenges in terms of kind of where the industry went during this period of the last 20 months. So if you could kick us off and just give your perspective from Samsung SmartThings, what was the biggest sort of aha in this period of time during COVID? And do you expect that to continue once we get out of COVID? So let's take the first half of that conversation. Was there one thing that surprised you in this past 20 months and what you saw in the digital home ecosystem?
I think there are a lot of surprises. I think we were surprised daily. Two things thought sort of emerged for us in areas that we have been investing, that we understood where customer demand really led. And that's in energy. The difference between my home and my entertaining space is a matter of throwing a football. And that space and the differentiation between that space, the energy that goes into that space, really made us think more about how do we accelerate what consumers need in terms of energy. So SmartThings Energy already on the roadmap and rolled out somewhat, but for us, really understanding that energy usage at home, knowing how your home is running, and then in a post COVID world, how do we help you continue to have visibility into energy usage and ensuring that, I think a recent study said 20% of broadband households increase their interest in energy specifically, all the way down to the device usage. So really understanding what energy usage looks like is one of the key areas we focused on during COVID, that we figured yes, during COVID, energy usage and the engagement we have with energy, making our office and our entertainment space in the same space. Yes, of course, that's obvious. But in a post-COVID world, what is the role of energy? And how do we ensure that our energy solution helps provide you the same transparency and ease of use as you have when you're actually in the home, when we start to live a more hybrid lifestyle?
Thank you for that. We're going to come back to energy a little bit later. Raman, your thoughts? Any surprises that, from your perspective at Comcast?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo kind of some of the data that Ben showed up at the beginning in terms of, how consumers are spending their time, how they're spending their money. I think when you have decreased spend on activities and social events and travel, when you have increased free time at home, you're investing in your castle. Like, consumers were taking a lot more opportunity to invest in their home. Home Depot and Lowe's shot through the roof with all the DIY projects. Mark, you mentioned at the top of the call in your intro, the growth in DIY smart home cameras. And I think we saw the exact same. We saw the need to pivot and adjust our business to provide opportunities in the DIY space from a security standpoint. So historically, Xfinity Home has just been a pro-monitored, pro-installed home security product. But at the beginning, or probably about middle of the pandemic, we launched a self-installable camera-only service and experience for our customers, because we know they wanted choice. Not everyone needs professional monitored home security. People want choice, and I think that's what our key learning was: is that there are two segments of customers. They are going to want choice, and we need to ensure we're evolving and adapting our service experiences to them to meet the customers where they are.
Terrific. Thank you. Mark, I'm going to turn to you next.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, in times of uncertainty where no one really knows, what's going to happen next month, it's hard to plan or predict your future. People kind of go back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So they want to feel safe, they want to feel secure, and we saw, a good increase of customers on both the DIY and the do-it-for-me, professionally install security products for them. And at first, it was more like safety, security, surveillance. And then that quickly morphed into energy management. We have a lot to talk about later about that. And home automation. So people just wanting to be connected to their home and being able to manage their kids doing remote learning in the other room while they're still on a Zoom call or a meeting like this. So a lot of people investing and really building out that smart home to kind of solve really key problems for them.
Thank you, Mark. Mohammed?
Yeah, just to probably echo a little bit, obviously on the Google side, we saw with home awareness, the popularity of doorbells in particular go up, and it very much makes sense. Folks were looking for ways to minimize contact with others at the front door and to communicate with certain folks through the doorbell where it made sense. So plus one to that, as well as the earlier insight around just home entertainment and spending more time at home. Personally, I've watched, I feel like my home has become a personal movie theater, watching all the new Marvel movies coming out on my Google TV. But I think what's also happened kind of as we look ahead is really there's more and more, if you will, a footprint of devices across your home and in your home. And I think that presents an opportunity for really presenting solutions that leverage maybe a diversity, if you will, of smart home devices across your home to really solve particular needs. So, I may have smart lights in my home, and I wonder, kind of looking forward, what role lights might play in more actively, kind of like in a security use case. I have those lights could also help me set a mood, for example, for entertainment. And those are just some simple examples, but I think COVID in some respects may have been an accelerant towards that whole home, proactive home kind of vision that many of us have imagined. Thank you, Mohammed. And Ben, any additional thoughts?
Absolutely. I agree with Mohammed. I mean, I think I've seen a lot of innovation, but consumers uncovering needs that they have inside the home. And, we see sales of smart home products which are focused on security and monitoring, which kind of dominate the market. But during this time, we've seen products that are kind of more geared towards like living inside the home gain a lot of traction. Lighting, power, ways that people can improve the inside of their homes really caught fire in terms of sales. And that's in conjunction with things like small appliances and air purifiers. So the idea that people were improving the experience inside of their home on top of making sure that they know who's coming to the door, I thought was really, really one of the biggest sort of developments in this entire experience.
Thank you, Ben. We can have an entire day session, I think, just as an output of each of your thoughts on this. But let's dive into a couple of points. And again, just a reminder to the audience, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. We'll try to get to as many as we can. One of the challenges of our collective industry is this notion that we're working in the Jetsons or Minority Report, right? We used to talk about smart, that word smart, that we're kind of retiring at the Emerging Tech Exchange, because not every consumer wants something smart. But we're talking about better living, right? And there are a lot of ways to define better living. I think you highlighted a lot of those. There's so many different trends that are coming to the forefront at the same time, and each of your businesses has to think about how do you take that. But one of the things that just came up in the conversation, each of your comments, was that the consumer has more choice than ever before, which is a good thing, and it's also a challenging thing. I think for the first time in the United States, we're really becoming aware of supply chain and the issues. It's now front page conversation in the Wall Street Journal, and some devices are not being delivered on time. The question is choice always a great thing? And the question that I want to pose to you is that one of the common conversations or holdbacks of the industry has been that there hasn't been one standard for all of these individual devices to work together. Tobin Richardson, who oversees the Connectivity Standards Alliance, is a good friend of ours, and many of you are on the board. And so I want to pose it to you because the press in particular loves to jump on the fact that we need a standard, and yet that standard keeps getting pushed back further and further along. So anyone could jump in here to say Matter, which is the name of the standard, is expected now to come into 2022. When can we expect to see a common standard in the industry? And when I say we, meaning when can consumers, the individuals at home that are deploying these devices, when can they realistically expect the devices to talk to one another? And anyone can jump in with an answer there.
I can start. I think Matter has been an extraordinary experience for those of us who have been in it. We get asked frequently, do all these large companies really do come together and drive towards a common goal? And the answer is yes, we do at every level. And it's meaningful and important conversations, and with the common goal of interoperability for all and access for all products, and being device agnostic, being brand agnostic. And we really do come together for this common goal. We expect to see products in market by this time next year, certainly. And what's most exciting, I think, is that this is just the beginning. We're looking at 1.0, but as consumers start to adopt more and more products and devices, and the ease of use, and the ability for us to truly be the Jetsons, will lead us to more and more products coming more frequently. And then I think it'll flip, and customers will demand what comes next for us in terms of device list selection. So where we go next, I think eventually will be led by the consumer as we drive towards mouse household penetration.
Thank you, Samantha. Anyone else want to jump in with an additional thought there?
Yeah, I can attest to that. I have at least weekly conversations with my counterparts at Google at how we can better bring Matter to use that for in-home private secure communications. So absolutely, we're working together, and very, very excited about that future where we all speak the same language.
I appreciate that,
Yeah.
Mark. Go ahead.
I would just add, I think also the promise of Matter is it addresses kind of really that core need in the home. Like if you think about what smart home or digital home, like what we're kind of competing with, we're competing with something as reliable and as easy as the light switch. And so insofar as we can bring Matter in more quickly to ensure kind of better reliability, easier setup, and the ability to kind of manage multiple ecosystems, I'm very excited about kind of truly starting to realize that vision, if you will.
Thank you all. And for anyone in the audience who isn't aware, Matter is a standard that's being developed by not only the representatives here today, but also Apple is a part of it, as well as Amazon is a part of it. And so it's an impressive group. And what we always try to do here at Emerging Tech Exchange as well is to bring together all different types of companies towards a common goal. So we are glad to see it. But now I'm going to tier the conversation, slightly differently, which is that I think there's this sort of tension now, but around security and automation vis-a-vis lifestyle within the home, right? And what the consumers are demanding. And some might say they're demanding both. They want a secure home, and they also want devices to work for them in a lifestyle perspective. But you have to make choices as an organization. And one of the things that was just brought up is that doorbells was one area that has really taken off. Doorbells, in particular, the video nature of a doorbell, the fact that you can not only track when your packages are arriving, you can track when your pets are leaving your property, and you can also share information with your neighborhood about if there are thefts or there's robberies or taking place in your neighborhood. But that notion of video as a product now combined with the hardware of a doorbell is something that's really taken off. So again, going to open it up to the broader group. When you think about this tension between sort of how this industry had developed around automation and security, and you think about now where we've been living in our homes, doing everything in our homes. In Samantha's case, the entertainment is right next to the computer, and many of us in our households it is. How do you see it within your organizations in terms of where the chips are? We're going to come out of this period that we call the pandemic. Now we'll be an endemic. And Raman, I see you're chomping at the bit. So why don't I start with you?
Sure. No, I mean, I think it's a great question, and I think building on what Mark said at the beginning is that it goes back to those hierarchy of needs, right? And I think at the bottom of those needs is, for us, it's Wi-Fi, right? Everyone needs internet. Everyone needs that to work. So we're in a great position with that aspect. But then it comes security, keeping your house and home secure. Until that need is met, and that need may be met today by two sides of that coin. It may be professional monitored home security, or it may be the video cameras and the doorbells and the like. So until those needs are met, from a security standpoint, then you can move into the lifestyle, the door locks, the thermostats, the Roombas, the sprinklers, what have you, all the different kind of ancillary point solutions. Those are, on top. And what I'd also say is that for us as an organization, we're a service company. We deliver services to our consumers. We deliver broadband service, video service, mobile service, security service, protection services. And at the core, we want to be in those businesses to generate recurring revenues. And the experiences that get built on top of that are a little bit of the cream on top of the cake, right? The automations, the lighting, the thermostats, the door locks, those get added onto that core security experience. But it starts with core security. That's at least where our position is today.
I like what you said about two sides of the same coin, because really everyone's familiar with the lifestyle connected experience for enjoyment, for automation, but almost every smart home or IoT connected product, if you flip it over, there's a life safety aspect as well. Connected lighting, it could deter crime by making it look as though you're home. Connected curtains, like the one that no one would think of. If someone's looking in your windows and seeing if you're home, they could shut, and they could turn on your connected sprinkler and spray the guy while you watch it and post it to Twitter. Like, everything has a life safety and a home automation aspect, and we're trying to make that more clear to people that they could have their cake and eat it too.
Mohammed?
Yeah, I would just add that I think more and more we're seeing kind of the graduation, if you will, from like selling individual devices to really trying to kind of align on particular user needs that you're trying to solve in the home. And so to Mark's earlier point, like many of the connected devices you have in your home have a role to play in some of these core needs, be it security, be it energy, be it entertainment. And so kind of excited to see all of these devices come together and converge to help solve these core user needs in the home, however small or large they may be.
Ben?
Yeah, I'll also add that security is an easy place for consumers to start on this journey, right? That we talked about sort of the hierarchy of needs. It's pretty plain and simple what a security camera allows you to do. It's actually pretty awesome that you can monitor your backyard when you're not there. And I think the key here is, how do you build upon that? As somebody enters the space through a video doorbell or a camera, how do you step them up into other product categories? And certainly, a message about interoperability is a really good one. But also, I think identifying some of those lifestyle things inside the home is a good way as well. Like, if somebody begins their smart home system with a connected lighting product, how do you get them to start thinking about cameras and doorbells? So one of the things that I see is communicating that benefit to consumers that start out on kind of the different hemisphere of the market, if you will.
That's helpful. Samantha, I'm gonna ask you a slightly different question. I'm gonna also give some props to Samsung here. Is that every year at CES, I put Samsung in my top 3 of booths. That and SmartThings is what I remember years ago was sort of the center of the hub, if you will, no pun intended. And we're kind of coming up to that period of time now. But Samsung has always been such an innovator in all forms of technology, but really pushed hard into lifestyle, as well as how, I mentioned at the top of this conversation around this notion of the Jetsons, but Samsung has done a brilliant job of sort of branding itself as a leader in the space of connectivity with consumers and really understanding the consumer's perceptions. This conversation around the digital home, we've expanded in our organization to cover all aspects of the industry. And one of the aspects that has come up a lot lately has been around connected health and wellness and fitness. And would love to get your point of view, whether it's something that you're developing at Samsung or just what you're seeing in the industry, about where that is heading in the year to come in 2022. We've seen everybody buy the Pelotons off the shelf, but there's a lot more beyond Peloton that's coming in terms of connected devices. Samsung has a play in the space, as does everybody else that's part of this call. So would love your perspective. This is a question that's coming from the audience about where you see the connected health and wellness space going in 2022.
That's a great question. And you're right. Samsung and Samsung SmartThings, it's all about the experience. And I think Mohammed said it well. We need to meet the users where they are. And if that is on your watch or in your home for your security, and obviously on your phone or television, a ubiquitous experience that makes life easier is really where we're focused. I can't speak specifically to our health and wellness business. I can say that 2 subjects, sustainability and health and wellness, are really top of mind as we look to listen to the consumers who really drive us to understand what kind of experiences they need. And we talked about post-COVID world. I think we're all coming out on the other end of that. We had talked about entertainment, security, and health and wellness is certainly one of those as well. For us, it's also how we create like and or identical experiences across all of our surfaces, so that you have a rich experience, or no matter which surface we're sharing with you and you are sharing with us. And then another piece of that, the second piece of that, is making sure that we keep you safe. And not so much in the security space, but more in the we keep you safe with your privacy, your data, and making sure that privacy remains top of mind as we help ignite the experiences that are driven by the consumer directly.
Thank you, Samantha. Mohammed, I'd love your perspective on health and wellness from Google's standpoint.
Yeah, I think there's potentially 2 ways to think about how technology can kind of help with respect to kind of well-being. One can be kind of very directly trying to address specific issues of health and wellness. For example, at Nest, we launched our latest Nest Hub, for example, has sleep sensing technology that allows it to try to understand your sleep patterns and make recommendations on how to get better sleep. So there's kind of the direct approach. But there's also the recognition that technology can sometimes be a great help, but also potentially a hindrance when it becomes distracting and it becomes engrossing. And so, building on what Samantha was saying, I'm very much a believer in a future where technology can become very much more cleansable, if you will, on various surfaces in and around your house. Rather than like always having to check the weather, for example, on your phone, and then seeing like 20 other distracting activities, whether they're articles or group messages or whatever else, I should be able to glance to the nearest screen and kind of get that information quickly without interrupting my day-to-day as heavily. So I think of it as kind of a two-pronged approach, technology taking on health and wellness directly, and also technology getting out of the way to give you health and wellness.
I love that answer. Thanks for sharing that. Mark, I'm gonna give a slightly different question to you, but tangentially related is we're talking about, and I like the framing of wellness, right? Because I think that there's the health aspect, there's the wellness aspect, but a big part of this and the underlying technology has sensors. There's a lot of data analytics, and you touched upon privacy. I think in the next year to come with the new FTC chair, et cetera, there's going to be a lot of conversation around privacy, but some of it is very healthy. And here's the interesting question that I'd like to ask you, Mark, in terms of kind of how you're seeing this whole equation around privacy and security, is that a lot of consumers, particularly the younger ones in the US, are very, very willing to give up their information as long as there's a value exchange. And oftentimes the value exchange needs to happen when it comes to security, keeping you safe. It needs to happen when it comes to your health. So think about what we're going through with COVID. If you're sharing information, you know that you could be safer or healthier in the face of COVID. But how do you think about this equation in terms of privacy and in what you do, Mark, at ADT, and how is that going to change over the upcoming year? How much will the consumer have a choice as to how much information he or she will be able to share?
I think it's going to increase, and that's something we're really pushing for. If you think about exchanging your data for a good or service, that is a business transaction, and it needs to be transparent. What are the terms? What am I giving up for how long? Just like any other business relationship or contract. Right now, unfortunately, it's being harvested and collected and used, and the consumer doesn't know how it's being used. They don't know that decisions are possibly being made about them that may affect their future without their knowledge, and that's not right. So we follow the privacy by design 7 principles in everything that we do, and we're looking for better ways to use the data that respects that privacy. And again, it's always going to be consumer's choice, but it needs to be an informed choice. So one thing's tying it back to wellness is that we're doing a lot of research on independent living, and no one wants to have a camera or any other like privacy violating sensors in their home. But something like Flow by Moen that does it's a water shutoff valve, but you get a lot of analytics on water. Is the water on? Is they washing the clothes? Are they doing this? Or Sense, which is an energy monitor. You can tell that, okay, my elderly parents, they're up and about, they cooked dinner, they did this, they washed their clothes, they're using the restroom, and get a sense that they're, things are okay. And then with the anomaly detection through ML machine learning, you can tell like, hey, they didn't do this thing that they normally do. What's going on? And those are things that I think people feel that data may be less sensitive than cameras or other forms of data.
Thank you, Mark. Raman, love your point of view on the privacy paradigm at Comcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think privacy, we've come out pretty strongly in terms of our position that customers' data is customers' data, and Comcast will not touch that to sell or distribute without your prior knowledge or acknowledgement. So I think it's very important. From a security standpoint, I think you've held our camera security, our camera video streams, et cetera. Those are customer owned. They are stored on Comcast servers or on other companies' servers, but no one within Comcast has the ability to even touch that unless there is a police warrant for that data for a certain action. So it's I think that's where we train our AI models on employee donated videos. No one touches that. It's not customer data. So I think for us, it's held at the most highest extremes. And building on what Mark said, though, what I do want to add on is I think it's not the position kind of maybe as my personal position is that passive sensing for other ancillary devices in the home is probably where we're going to get to when it comes to aging in place and kind of monitoring. I think that the camera use cases are going to be limited from a privacy standpoint. So I agree that that's an area that we're certainly continuing to research and build use cases and value propositions around. But I think that passive sensing, whether that be through other devices, Wi-Fi motion sensing, et cetera, will be important to build new services off of.
Thanks for that, Ben. Many of the companies that are represented today also manufacture TV screens, and one of the topics that we've been discussing is what is the interface, right, going to be within the home, and where people want to actually, where do they want to automate, where do they want to see their security, how do they want to transact from an e-commerce standpoint. I have a lot of fun debates with some analysts on Twitter around the notion of home OS or home operating systems versus TV operating systems, because there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm around the connected TV. And again, many of the companies, Google and Samsung and Comcast, have big plays in the TV space. From where you sit at MPD Group, how do you see this sort of evolution between what's known as the connected TV and home automation, right? Where do you see the kind of industry going? Is there going to be a moment where the TV ecosystem pivots a bit and starts to say that the television now can be used as a much more powerful hub, if you will, for the home than it is today?
Well, I feel like we've been talking about that as kind of the promise of the all-encompassing smart home for a long time, right? That so many things happen in and around the TV that's where eyeballs are. That's where you want to, see your security camera feeds and everything. And let me present a slightly different idea about that. And it dovetails on something that Samantha said, which is people want to control their devices like wherever their eyeballs are, right? And I spent a long time working from home during the pandemic. I never used my smartphone more than during the pandemic. It was always by my side because I was using it for work. I was using it to control things. The fact that I was not outside and being mobile did not mean that I wasn't using my phone. And I suspect that for a lot of consumers, that may be the case, or maybe the tablet is sort of their center of attention. We're always talking about young consumers, how they don't care about the TV. So you've got to kind of figure out, okay, where are they going to want to interface with the connected devices in their home? So I think it includes the TV. It includes everything else. These devices are, a couple among many connected devices in my home. And I simply want to control them when I have, when I want to. And that may be when I'm looking at my smartwatch. That may be when I'm looking at my phone. And it might be when I'm sitting in front of my TV trying to find something to stream. So, for me, there isn't like a clear path for one versus the other. Everything that I'm seeing inside the home in terms of what consumers are doing, what devices consumers are buying, to me says that we want access, wherever we are. And if I can bring in another example, like we've been through 20 months of pandemic. One thing that has changed is how we purchase products, right? And many of us buy them online. Some of us buy them on our phones. But I think through this process, retailers realize we need to be there in the moment, right? We need to be selling products when it's top of mind for people. And I think a similar dynamic exists in the home with respect to our devices and control over our connected products.
Ben, I think you bring up an interesting point. I want to get everybody's point of view on this, and I'll start with Samantha. Is that okay? So the TV might not be the center hub for younger consumers, right? All the studies have shown that they're on their mobile devices in mass and on all the social platforms, but there's a ton of commercial interest in the television as a unit, both from a content, advertising, and other parts of the ecosystem as well, including automation. When we talk about screens, right? There's screens on Pelotons or screens on digital assistants. There are times when screens are useful. There are times where screens perhaps could even be more useful than they are today, that they don't offer. Not every screen is equal, right? What can be seen on a mobile screen is very, very different than what could be seen on a TV or on a thermostat, right? And so depending on where you are in the room, you might not have the same sort of capability to pull up the Weather Channel or to buy something from Walmart on that particular screen. But then there's this whole other notion of UX and interfaces. And if we were having this conversation 5 years ago, the primary conversation would be around voice enablement, right? And what has been done by Amazon and Google and many other organizations too, around, is that going to be the new UX, the voice going to be the new UX? So Samantha, the question is that there are all these different ways that consumers can now interact with their devices. So how do we as an ecosystem think about that and think about all of that working together? And are there different use cases that sort of emerged during COVID that we should be thinking about that maybe we hadn't thought about prior to being at home so much?
Greg, I think that's like 4 questions in one.
It has a lot of questions. Take one chunk.
I would say one thing that emerges, yes, a screen is not a screen is not a screen. And what we do in on different surfaces are a variety of different use cases. One thing, as you were talking, that really comes to surface is the role of Matter. Matter was actually really created during COVID. We announced Matter in December of 2019, and we're coming on that our 2-year anniversary of the early announcement. And this COVID baby of ours, it really speaks a little bit to what you're talking about different experiences and different surfaces and what you expect from it. So I think the big theme that emerges for me is interoperability and really continuing to meet the consumers where they are. And being diligent about it. We know that being open is incredibly important to this next gen. A homeowner, something like 40% would have less square footage for a more of a better eco-friendly connected environment. So we know that we need to meet you where you are. I think Matter will help us get there. Yes, different use cases emerge, but I think that what emerged that I think is most meaningful and the largest inflection point the smart home industry has seen that has moved us from a smart home to a digital home, even if it's not at home per se, is Matter and what the interoperability of Matter is going to bring to us. And that's sort of the main thought that comes to mind with bundling all those questions into one.
Okay, so fourth quarter of next year, we're looking forward to the products being rolled off the shelf.
One would hope.
We're all hoping. We're all right. Tobin, if you're here, no pressure, my friend. Raman, your thoughts just on and again from Comcast lens, you announced that you're going to be creating smart TV screens, rolling them out through Walmart and other channels. Just would love your perspective on interfaces and kind of how you're thinking about, from a company perspective. You have so many different product lines that rely on different interfaces, from the mobile device to the watch to of course the television. Your quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think echoing what everyone said before, it's meet the customer where they are, and it's also having UX that's designed to fit those needs for those specific use cases. So a customer is going to open up their phone and may want to tap directly in and view their cameras and see what's going on and jump in directly to do a specific action. When they're watching TV and then sitting back and enjoying a movie or streaming or watching a live sporting event, they're not going to want their entire screen taken over with someone's at the door. We want to make those things very user-friendly and seamless. So, little notifications, we call it a toaster, where it pops in and out to give you some awareness and some acknowledgement of what's going on. And then the controls are in your hand, consumer, to pick and choose what you want to do. Click a few buttons on your voice remote, opens up a picture-in-picture, opens up greater capability to kind of dive into that smart home experience. So it's not, again, in your face, but it's seamless in the background. You choose how you want to engage with it. So that's probably the first thing I'd say, is that it's about seamless interoperability, specific UX experiences designed for those specific screens, whether that be our mobile, our home security controller panel, our TV screens on X1 and Flex. The other piece, though, from a TV perspective, you're spot on. Both in the UK as well as here, we've launched new TV products across our portfolio. Glass for our Sky customers in the UK, and X-Class TV manufactured by Hisense here in the US. And so I think that's bringing together our best kind of video platform that we deliver for X1 and Flex customers in footprint into a box that can be sold to customers across the United States in and out of footprint. So it's again, it's that world-class experience to pick and choose your content, live video and streaming across all those different apps that are integrated, as well as using our voice remote to get to that content in a seamless way. So for us, it's about ease of use. And I think we're really excited and looking forward to what X-Class can be for us.
Thank you for that, Raman. Mark and Mohammed, I'm going to ask a question to you about cameras. We've talked a lot about that in the beginning of this call. there's a natural tension around video cameras today in the US. There's a lot of utility to video and to the sensors and to tracking in homes. Some of that could be aging in place. Some of it could just be convenience, right? We're seeing that play out in spades on the retail side, the convenience of walking in and out of shops without needing to take out a physical wallet, just using a digital wallet. So, Mark, I'll kick off with you first, and just in your thoughts on cameras, video cameras, and sort of how do you see that playing out within the home, and just again from an overarching privacy and security perspective, how at ADT do you think about sort of the positioning of cameras so that consumers understand that there's more benefit to deploying them than perhaps a fear of where that information or the video assets are going to be heading?
Absolutely. So we're planning on 2022 to be a key year for our Google partnership. We're going to be starting with selling the Nest battery doorbell in January, and quickly moving into a very integrated, really, really exciting thing where a professional can come out and design the smart home of our customers' dreams and install it and maintain it and support it with this fully integrated experience in energy management. It's super exciting. So going back to cameras, we're also offering an innovative monitoring solution. So everyone says, cash is king, but context, when it comes to technology, context is king. So what I mean by that is if your alarm goes off, what do? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it a burglar? Is it your maybe teenage kid trying to sneak out at night? You don't know unless you combine other data to get a full picture, and cameras are absolutely part of that, as well as all the other sensors and types of data. So what we're doing is we're partnering with PSAPs or police organizations and 911 centers across the country to do a video verification, not only to reduce false alarms, but actually provide first responders with context of what they're walking into. Right now, they walk into something blind. They don't know if the person they're seeing belongs there. Are they the home resident or are they the burglar? And by bringing this data for customers that opt into using their cameras for this service, we'll be able to, the customer can participate, our professional monitoring center can participate, and then provide all of that to first responders so that they can make the best decision and know exactly what they're walking into. So cameras are a key part of really providing that extra context digitally transmitted to these 911 centers.
Mohammed, we're getting close to the top of the hour. So Mark spoke about your partnership, and you'll be happy to know that I have a Nest doorbell at home. So thumbs up on that end. The final question for all of you to just kind of think about 30 seconds. And again, we can go on for days, but just what is one prediction that you expect that this group, the audience, can kind of take away? What is one prediction that you see coming forward in the next 12 months that's going to change in the digital home?
I'll go first. So I've been studying this a lot, and this is absolutely going to happen. So energy efficiency, integrated energy management, and being able to harvest and store and use your own energy through solar, absolutely going to happen. So according to the IMF, natural gas is up 519% in the last 12 months. That's crazy, 30% last year, no sign of trailing off. So what that means is energy prices, not just gas, because natural gas is the highest producer of electricity in the US. So everyone's bills are going to go up. So, Charlie Munger said, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Absolutely, everyone's going to look at how do I automate energy efficiency? How do I collect and store renewable energy so that my bills aren't 5, 6, 7, 8 times what they were last year? Absolutely going to happen. ADT is super bullish. We just launched, or we're launching ADT Solar through our partnership. We acquired SunPro, and we're very excited about this space and what it has to offer for our consumers. Okay,
personal energy, says Mark. Ben, you ready to go? 30 seconds.
Yeah, I won't even need 30 seconds. I think that we're going through an awakening with respect to data, and that I think users are beginning to realize the power of their data, not just keeping it private, but also, having some rights around it. And if somebody else is going to monetize my data, I should get something of substance from that. I know we had an earlier conversation about that, but Right now, we're seeing companies realize the value of their own data, and it's beginning to scale. And I think we'll see a similar thing happen with consumers.
Thank you, Ben. Mohammed.
Let's see. I'm going to give two, so maybe one of them will come to fruition. I think one is the convergence of control across the various surfaces you're kind of encountering in your life, and kind of continuing to see the proliferation of that, so that your smart home controls exist potential on your wearables, on your TV, wherever else. And then I think the second is with the onset of Matter, and a rejuvenation, if you will, in smart home quality. Just like at the end of the day, I think a lot of these interesting trends we've been discussing aren't realizable without really the core foundation of everything just working. And I think with this new standard, really kind of honing in on making sure your smart home devices, just the fundamental command and control works. I think we're going to see quite a bit of increase in the quality as we kind of converge around the standard.
Thank you. Samantha.
Yeah, a combination of those two things. So we're honing in on some common themes here. Really what Mark was saying, with the new infrastructure bill that just came through yesterday, we know there's something like $65 billion for broadband. A piece of that will go to IoT. What does that mean? We look at the tax on what adoption of EV will look like, and this seismic paradigm shift is going to have to be central to what we're thinking about. Distributed energy, what we do about it, how the consumer can help control it. That's what Smart Things Energy is. Consumers can play a bigger role in their own energy consumption. And I couldn't plus one enough the importance of the role of energy.
Terrific. And Raman?
Yeah, I think all of the things you guys have mentioned are spot on. I think, it's going to be, if one or two of those things come to fruition, I think we're going to be in a really good spot. I'd say taking a different bet, I would say, is that just on the wellness space. I know we touched on it briefly, but I think with asynchronous wellness and what you can do with cameras and other sensors and monitoring to adapt and help consumers kind of reach their full potential, even if as we're starting to open up, people are not going back to gyms in the same way they were previously and historically. So people can get just as good of workouts at home doing other, things with whether it be bikes or treadmills or other accessories. So I'm excited for that space and to see what happens in 2022 and beyond.
Well, terrific. This couldn't be any better of a conversation. Two quick things before I let everybody go. You'll be happy to know that our next session is around energy, and we're going to be doing a session with Emerging Tech Bytes on electric and connected vehicles in 2 weeks on December 1st. And then the next two afterward are going to be on the metaverse and on crypto and NFTs. So if you have any interest in those, please come back in a couple of weeks. We're also going to be doing several sessions at the Consumer Electronics Show, including a dinner on the digital home. So anyone that's heading to Vegas in January, we look forward to seeing you there. Samantha, Raman, Mohammed, Mark, Ben, this has been amazing. Terrific to see you all. Look forward to doing it again in person. As much as we love these hop-in calls, prefer to do it in person. To everyone who joined us, thanks for taking the time. We'll see you very shortly. Bye now.